Hi, everybody. So welcome. You're waiting a little bit more, so 2 or 3 minutes.
Good morning.
And so this is Dieter, colleague of mine from Denmark. This is Don, colleague of mine from USA. This is Mark.
Hello.
I'm from USA.
Nice to meet you.
Samira Shabane, an excellent student from
Hi.
Germany and
Hi.
born in Kosovo, but she lives and studies in Germany. She's studying now one course of advanced studies at Academy of Leadership Sciences, Switzerland.
So, wohin in Deutschland?
So her assignments when you read, so really, so you get motivated to read the assignments, you see. Welcome, all of you.
So, wohin in Deutschland?
Guten Tag. Ik ben niks gut aus Deutsch, aber ich will in Englisch sprechen.
Meine Deutsch ist nicht so schön, you know.
Yes, Don used to live in Germany as well a little bit.
I went to the Würzburg, University of Würzburg.
Nice.
Yeah, good wine, gutes Wein.
Yeah, so let's wait if somebody else is joining us and give them some time. How are things done in US?
Scary, as you might imagine, but otherwise fine.
Yeah, you've got
some positive signs. New York City is having fewer admissions and more people are being discharged from the hospitals. That's a good sign.
So let's hope that we will overcome this with.
I live.
Mark?
Yeah, I live down in Florida, on the east coast of Florida, and so I think we're just about to get the peak of what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. So everybody is sheltering in place here. That's for sure.
That's good. That's good.
It's really the only one thing nowadays, you know, that we can save lives to keep a little bit social distancing.
Yes.
Dieter, how are things in your country?
People are a little frustrated, of course, about the situation. But yeah, they tend to live their lives as they used to. We don't have that in Denmark. We don't have that much experience with wars and stuff like that. So
that's a shame. That's a shame. You should change that. You know, wars is such a good thing, you know. I'm so happy for you, actually.
So I think half of the population are basically just seeing it as a situation of having a new short vacation. And half of the population are, of course, scared, and the vulnerable people are afraid of their health issues. Hi, Mom.
Your mother is on?
My mom is on, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Nice meeting you, Birte, huh? Nice meeting you.
Yeah, and I had a leadership team that my team, I'm in part of JCI as well, and they are having their Thursday break together, you know, drinking, talking about the stuff. I hope that they will join at some point.
Great.
But let's see if it works out.
Yeah. So we can see that somebody else is trying to join us as well. So we will make this small talk until the saturation is being seen here, or maybe millions of people will join us. Who knows? Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, Samira, will you tell us something? Are you in Germany at the moment, or where are you?
Where I am?
Yeah, at the moment.
No, I'm in Denmark right now.
Ah, in Denmark. Oh, you see. Okay. What are you doing over there?
I'm trying to build up different solutions because I'm waiting for the big wave of people that needs to get through all the emotions of this crisis. Of course, people, when they are in a crisis, they are not ready to work with their emotions. So this is not the right time to do therapy, but I think it will be in a couple of weeks. When we start to open up the country again, people will start to feel how they have actually been into fear for a long period, and they of course need to restore their energy and get through their emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the aim of this lecture as well, which we have constructed together. Samira, I didn't hear from you. Where are you at the moment? Samira Shaboni, we cannot hear you. Right now?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, it didn't work with them. Okay.
You don't need that. We can hear very good.
So I'm in Germany. I was planning to do an internship at a German institution in Kosovo, where it was a European integration project, but unfortunately then 2 days before my flight, all flights were canceled. So now I'm studying for the online lectures, reading a lot, and I think Germany is well organized, so let's see what's happening.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think, Dita, we should start as we said actually, and I'm going to share with you some slides here. So if everything works, we have actually before tried. It should be. Yes.
As I said the other day, Fadil, Dita is far more handsome than you are.
Well, there is no doubt. There is no doubt, and probably even much more smarter than me. So this is good, you know. You know, Don, to gather smart people, you know, together. This is leadership. So welcome all of you to this webinar. As I said, I'm honored to work together with Dita Jørgensen, a very known psychologist from Denmark, a Master of Science, and we are honored to share with you today this lecture, using leadership and emotional intelligence competencies to manage coronavirus crisis, because unfortunately, as we know, we are the whole world at the moment in crisis, and we know that it's not very easy for leaders to manage, because just as we mentioned before, many of us, we didn't have such an experience. So I want to give the word to my colleague, Dita, please. So may I ask you to introduce yourself, what you do, and so then we will carry on. Thank you very much for the opportunity you gave us to work together with the Academy of Leadership Sciences, Switzerland. And just to inform you, we have signed MOU together, and we will work together with Dita. Before Dita starts to introduce herself, I'm honored to have here Don. Professor Don is a very experienced psychologist, as I said before. Then we have Samir as an excellent student over there. We have Mark, it's excellent in his domain in marketing. And many others who are listening to us. Thank you very much. Dita, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I cannot really step into the floor since there is no real room here, which is making it even more difficult to be a leader in these times, I think. So I think it's also very important to include that perspective into it, actually. But thank you very much, Fadil, and thank you very much for inviting me to this seminar. I have been very interested in this subject for a lot of years, since I felt that it was something that was not included enough in the leadership literature, which was the reason why I chose to dig into it into my university years. And I finished as a psychologist 6 years ago, and then I've been trying to maintain a lot of experience with this subject, both within myself and also in working with the leaders and in the therapies that I'm having. I've been working in a municipality office in Denmark, so I've been quite close to the politicians and the inner structure of Denmark. And I can say that that in Denmark we are having structures that are allowing people to, in some sort of ways, to follow their emotions and take decisions on the emotions' behalf, which I think is quite important in the situation of developing your emotions. So we are also, we cannot get rid of the fact that we are, for some people, we are told to be the most happiest population in the world, run over by the Finnish people now, and they do also have a woman leader at their the top leadership position. I don't really think that it has anything to do with with whether you are female or you are a gentleman, but it has something to do on your perspective of being a human being in this world, I think, and whether you had been allowed to be in your emotions or not. So let's reveal that one today. But I think that if we take the next slide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Do you want to continue, Fadil?
This is in mine. But I think before I go to this, thank you very much, Dieter. I would like to give the word to a colleague of mine, Don Salim, Professor Don Salim, as well psychologist and a very good colleague of mine, and we have been working for almost 6 years together. Don, please, would you like to introduce yourself? And I talk to Dieter anytime, you know, you can put your inputs, because we are an international team and we want to help the world in those crises. Please, Don, go ahead. Oh, Don, we cannot hear you. Can you please turn on
I got it.
Yes, please, go ahead, Don.
For the very first time, I put the mute button on, because you know how much I like to talk. So I thought I would sort of inhibit myself.
No. We will not let you be quiet.
Okay. Excellent introduction. Thank you very much. And I'm very much looking forward to get to know you a bit more after this call. Working with Fadil has been an excellent and very satisfying experience over the last few years. And our models for excellence and effectiveness and maturity within management and leadership and the world as a whole really overlap very nicely. So it's very enjoyable to have that sort of linked up conversation that we're able to have. As Fadil has said, I'm a clinical psychologist and a social medical anthropologist. I'm one of those silly people who did 2 PhDs, which is why I don't have any hair and I'm a bit crazy. But the concerns that I think we all have right now are simply accelerated by the current events from what's sort of normal out there. The lack of maturity, of emotional maturity, of any sense of what the output is supposed to be, what the outcomes are supposed to be. Those two things marry together beautifully, and so there's a cognitive process involved. There's simply the levels of emotional maturity involved, and then there's an understanding of what it means to be a leader. And we're certainly seeing in our country, given what's going on right now, a real lack of leadership, real leadership at the top levels. We have people like the governor of New York State. He gives a master class on leadership every single morning in his news briefings. But you know, we don't have the kind of wartime leadership, if you will, that's important to have to manage a crisis like this. And so we're very concerned about it. I have practiced with my colleagues in Europe and in various places throughout North America, in Asia. We have a facility in Lahore, Pakistan. And so we've got a bit of a reach, but gathering folks up like you, Dika, to add to the strength of that message is something we're really looking forward to. So I'm intrigued to be part of this today, and I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Samira, would you like shortly to introduce yourself, but you have to turn on your Microphone, yeah, please.
Okay. So I'm Samira Shabani. I finished this year my studies of political science and French studies. I was born in Germany, but I'm originally from Kosovo. I personally am aiming to work in diplomacy and international relations, and I got to know Professor Fadel Chitoko during a workshop, and I have to admit that it is true nowadays we really see a lot of politicians that represent or present a lack of leadership, and for that reason it was important for me to join this class. Yeah, first of all, because we need leadership in politics and also in everyday life. And every time I read something new about leadership, I recognize its importance. And I'm really glad that I was invited today, and looking forward to hearing what you're going to say.
Thank you very much. We need new leaders, competent leaders.
Yes.
Because just as both three of you mentioned, actually, so there is a lack there. And the problem is that they didn't learn anything about leadership when they got those positions. That's why we have a very big mess worldwide. And I always say, actually, that the non-competent leadership, non-competent leaders, they are much more dangerous than this virus, by the way.
Yes, they are.
So I don't know, Mark, I cannot see you at the moment. I think you were here. Would you like please to introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Fadil. My name is Mark Healy. I am the founder and owner of Virtual Hospitality Group, and I work with Fadil and Dr. Dawn and several business channel partners on bringing our leadership education and products forward so that we can get wider distribution of our stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yes.
Okay, so today really I'm here auditing and learning as well with everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I don't know if Nazim is here or Arte, I cannot see.
I don't see them.
I don't see, they might come, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, all of you. I'm going to start with our leadership competency model. I come from the medical education. Colleagues of me, they know, but since we are recording this session, so my name is Fadil Chitoko, as I said before. I was born in Kosovo and actually brought up, but I've been living for almost 30 years here in Switzerland and became Swiss a long time ago. And during my PhD in medical education, I did investigate 6 different kind of countries. 3 German-speaking ones, such as Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Canada, UK, and USA. And we came with this model of leadership competencies, actually. And what I did, actually, it was a huge study. I just gathered those information, and we used a very rigid methodology of research, actually, and comparing those data. And we came with that model of leadership competencies that has been published in British Medical Journal, as you can see, because it was a big lack, actually, of leadership in this domain. And so we have published this in British Medical Journal, which it is not to overestimate, but it is a dream of each scientist in medicine and healthcare to publish there. And such a big study was for the very first time, actually, in the Western countries published. And fortunately, I'm very glad that in the meanwhile, many of other countries, other cultures have replicated this study, such as in South America. And we know, Don, we were co-authors over there, by the way, as well, with Professor Mano. And in the Asian context as well has been tested and replicated. So we are glad to actually share those competencies with the world. And so this is the model, actually, which carries my name. And it comprises 63 competencies which can be learned. But those are, as you can see, to be found in those 5 different kind of models, different kind of domains, excuse me. At the very top, it came the social responsibility. So I just want to align a little bit that with the crisis which we have now, as Don says before, and Vite, it is actually one challenge for everybody now, for all leaders. And they have really to show now the social responsibility. And this is not a very easy thing, because we know, such as in Switzerland, Denmark, USA, one day, not to work, it costs billions of dollars and so on. And
that's right.
But the good thing is that we are trying, and this is really, as I said, over those 6 countries, I was very glad when I analyzed those data that social responsibility came at the very first time. So that means we have to care for human being, at the very first time now, just as Don mentioned, that to fight for each life, that is very important. Absolutely. So one life, in my opinion, I come from medical education. I used to work in emergency and anesthesia, and I know how much we were sweating to save a single life. For me, in my opinion, this is nothing to compare with one life, actually. That's why we have to take all resources now to gather together to consult the specialists, because even Switzerland, I want to criticize a little bit. I read in the paper that the Department of Health didn't consult all experts. So we need those experts to consult, because somebody from politicians, nothing against them, but they know some other things. But regarding the health, they really have to take to gather the best specialists. Innovation, it is another domain, so we know how the things change nowadays. Every day while we are talking here, actually things are changing. So it is good that it is important that we see out of the box, actually, and try to be innovative and to be creative as well. Another competency domain which is very important is self-management. As a leaders, we can never actually be able to lead somebody if we can be ourselves and have a self-management. So Dieter will come to that, I believe, later on, and Don as well, and Mark, and feel free, everybody, to talk something about. Task management for leaders, we are talking, it's very important, absolutely. And we know, just as you mentioned before, till now we have actually hired leaders regarding the based on technical abilities and skills that they had. And we didn't teach a day how to lead, actually. And this is the challenge, Don, just as you mentioned at the beginning, because they might have been marvelous in something, how to talk in politics or, in technology and whatever. But when you are a leader, you have to do with a human being. And a human being is pretty complex, because the brain, it's differently. Each brain of us, it's differently. I will come to the anatomy and physiology a little bit later. In the last domain of this competency model, it is justice orientation. Very important thing that we treat equally everybody, actually. And this is not easy job, but we have to aim this. And I'm going to give now further the word of my colleague, Dieter, please, you can carry on. So I don't know if those things are, welcome all of you now. I can see so many other people. Welcome to our session here, everybody. Dieter, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Fadil. I think first of all, in order to talk about the subject, we of course need to frame it so that we are making sure that we are talking about the same thing. So in order to grasp the phenomena of emotional intelligence, we need to define what we mean about it. Let me see, I can see the screen here. So what Baron and Gerald Matthews and Richard Roberts and Moshe, I bound that together, and I tried to find a definition that would bind them all together. And what it says is that the phenomena of emotional intelligence is an era of non-cognitive capabilities. So we're actually talking about, because some talks about cognitive experiences or surroundings in a lot of different ways, but we are talking about a non-cognitive capabilities, and by that I mean the brain, which is a competencies and a skill that is influenced by one's ability to succeed and cope with the environmental demands and pressure.
Yeah.
So it is the person's ability to skip in and out and to stay in themselves and to cope with those emotions in relation to the environment. So this also includes the interpersonal intelligence, which is the ability to react in a proper way towards other people's emotions and temperaments and motive, and of course the interpersonal intelligence. And the difference between the interpersonal, there's a lot of psychologist terms here, but the difference between interpersonal intelligence is the intelligence that you are having when you are together with other people, but the intra is the intelligence within yourself, and that is this having the ability to enter your own emotions and to let those to be led by those emotions in your behavior, but of course in the right manner. So if you skip to the next
yes, I'll do it.
Slide. Yeah, because what we need to frame is, of course, that as we see this as a scientific perspective, we need to reframe to put the frames up. So what we need to understand is that a human being is not just the most, sorry for the spelling, the most thinking species on the planet, but is also the most feeling species. But that is also our greatest nature power. So that is the greatest power within people, that they have the emotions and the ability to motivate themselves or motivate other people by those emotions, or by putting those emotions into the behavior. So emotion, they must be understood as a state that can be influenced by the person's dynamic interaction with other people and with the physical environment and the social environment. So those are all linked together, just so we put up the framework. Can you do the next slide for that? Yeah. So what we are saying is that everyone can be mad. That is quite easy. All of us knows how to be mad. But to be mad to the right person at the right extent, at the right time, and with the right purpose, in the right way, that is not easy. And that is how, and that is why we are talking about emotional intelligence. We need to know how to be mad at the right person, at the right extent, at the right time, and with the right purpose, right? Yeah. So next slide.
Please, yeah.
And feel free to ask some questions if you have any questions, of course.
Yeah. As we go along, I'll have some positive comments and some thoughts that may expand upon what you're saying, but I think you're spot on with what you're doing, Dita.
Good, thank you. Can you do the next slide, Fadil?
Next one, yes, gonna do it.
So one of the biggest theoretical perspectives on emotional intelligence are done by Daniel Goleman, and he was a doctor and psychologist and has a big empiric research behind his results. And that is quite important when we talk about subjects, that we are actually having good research behind, even in these times where we cannot really find out whether things are fake news or something that we can really trust. But I believe that we can really trust Daniel Goleman's research. He has been searching 200 global companies, and he's integrating the socio-biological integration. So he's integrating everything about the human being into creating this heavy fundament in his theories. And he introduced the name of emotional intelligence for the broad publicity in 1995. And then in 1998, he wrote an article in HBR, which is the Harvard Business Review, which is folding out this phenomena in relation to organizational development. And what I forgot to tell is that I'm a psychologist, but I specialized in employment development and leadership and organizational development, because I was so interested in how can we change the environment so that the people will be thriving even more? Because we cannot look at the person as a subject without understanding the environment that they're put into. So Goleman also found out that even though the traditional leadership qualities would be like decision making, robustness, and visions, that is quite important as a leadership, right? So when we're talking about right leadership, we're also referring to the fact that we need leaders that are also a success in another perspective, not only in decision making or robustness and vision, but we also need to have efficient leaders. And they found out that people or leaders are more efficient at their work if they also at the same time include self-awareness, self-regulation, and that they have an empathy and other social skills, because they will be a whole leader as we speak. So the next slide, Fiddle. Yeah. So from my point of perspective, I went into an organization to find out how come that sometimes we see a leader and we understand the leader as a whole person, but then when we experience them in organizations, they sometimes sense to take decisions that seems quite unempathically, that they take decisions where we think, that is weird. When I experience this person outside of the organization, I can party with this person and he has a nice family life. So how come that he takes decision that seems to be unempathic within the organization? And I started to research about this emotional intelligence. And the interesting is that it was not the cognitive structure behind this emotional intelligence that we are doubting. It was more, how do we create organizations and how can countries put up frameworks where the persons that we are working with, for instance, if we take a leader and we help them to develop the emotional skill sets, how can we actually build organizations and structures that are keeping up with that learning so that they are not stopping? For instance, a lot of years we have been very much into business. A successful business would be the business that is earning a lot of money, that is having the high value on the stock market. And so they are all the time being told that they are a success if they have a high value economic wise. So they have been motivated by different things that we want them to. We want them to be real leaders. We want them to be wholehearted leaders that take care of the world's population, who takes care of good subjects. But if we are putting up structures and frameworks like KPIs, when you motivate the leaders by how many sales they are able to deliver and not how wholehearted a leader they are, then you will keep them stuck in that situation of not being an emotional intelligent leader. So we need to make sure to combine those two. So this is not only calling for the leader to develop their interpersonal skills. It is also calling for very known people that can actually design new structures that are motivating the leaders to be wholehearted leaders and to take care of the people as well. So the problem is right now that emotional intelligence is actually the state which is mirrored by the cultural agreements. So is it cultural okay to refer to your heart, or is it cultural okay to choose people's life in front of the economic situation? Do we have normative languages that are actually supporting the interplay between the people of being a wholehearted leader? And do we have relevant laws and rules that are supporting that behavior? And that is very, very important, as I see it as a development psychologist within the organization. We need to put up structures that are motivating people in another direction. Okay. So next slide.
Yes.
Yeah. That was about the, yeah. Do any one of you have some questions to the last slide? Because that might invite some new perspectives in the subject.
This was the last one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far? Please just take opportunity. I could see that some other colleagues are joined us, so-called from Albania. Mr. Pedersen, I believe from Scandinavia somewhere. Welcome to us. As Dieter was talking, I was searching some very important people. Do you have any questions so far to this marvelous talk of Dieter so far?
No, not yet. I'm just listening.
Okay.
Getting some inspiration.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
So anytime, please disturb us. Don't care, to interrupt us. I said not disturb. We will not be disturbed.
Okay.
Sorry. Interrupt us anytime. Dieter and myself, we are very flexible.
Okay.
Otherwise, we go on Dieter here. You want to just
sure. Yeah?
Please.
Thank you.
So what we need to understand is there a difference between the intrapersonal being and the extrapersonal being, or the environment which is actually influencing the person. So there will always be this vice versa interaction between the subject and the objective environment. So even though the person seems to be quite nice at the bottom of the heart, or as a good family father or a good mother, are they allowed to use the language within the emotions? So there is a difference between the intrapersonal state of being and whether it is allowed to express your emotions in organization or in countries. We can see the difference between civil countries, that they are handle the emotions and the way they say hello to each other in quite different ways. And this is also mirrored in the emotional intelligence. And it doesn't mean that they don't have emotional intelligence within. That is quite important to understand. So in order to look empathically, you also need to have empathic and trustworthy communication. So how do the leader appeal to your people? How do they appeal to their people? Because they can be a good-hearted person, but if they're not able to handle their emotion that good, or all people in this world will hit the certain amount of level that they can handle emotionally, and then they will be freaked out. Of course, all people are emotional beings, so we will have this limit on what we can handle and tackle. And not having sleep for a lot of days because you need to hurry up as a politician and as a leader is taking away your emotional intelligence in no time. So we also need to look at the situation around the leaders before we judge them, and maybe even taking out the judgment of them. So we can communicate in several ways. So what I would recommend as a leader is that you both include ethos, which is how to show people that you are following the ethics and the moral and the code of conduct of the organization. You also need to be connected to the pathos, which is to talk to people's emotion and create spaces where they can show their emotions. And of course, we all know leaders in the world that had been using this communication for their own behalf for the wrong reasons. So it has nothing to do with emotions either. But you need to show it on the outside how you feel inside. And that is also emotional intelligence. And of course, you need to refer, even though you are an emotional intelligent leader, you need to be trustworthy. You need to refer to the statistic and the scientific knowledge and refer to experts in order to make them believe that what you're saying is actually true. And specifically here in crisis time, people really need to get some objects. You know, every person is a human being, and we all have an inner child. And if people are feeling insecure, they need this object to hold on to. They need something to lean into and to hold on to. And of course, you will be that kind of person as a leader. You will be that mom or dad that they will lean into. But you also need to understand that in crisis time, people will be searching. They will be high working. They will be very focused on finding statistics and things that they can actually trust when you're talking. So you also need to keep the structure. So it's quite a big assignment to be a leader right now. Let's just say that out straight up. Yeah. So I don't know, the next slide, which is, what is that, Fadil?
Yeah, this is.
Can you give me the next slide?
Next
Fadil?
one, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
the next one would be my
Exactly.
comparison, but this was the last one from your side as you sent to me. So they need safe space, as you said, which really we cannot emphasize enough, I believe.
Yeah.
But please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I can sum up that one. Of course, in order to, if we see it in an empathically way, if we look at the politicians empathically just for a second, I wouldn't be in that position right now, because they are also just human beings. So a politician, of course, also need a safe space. They need to know that there are people that is having their back. They need to know that there are people who are actually backing up what they are talking about. Of course, they also need a lot of information. People need a lot of information. So what the best thing they can do is, I remember one time, back in the days, 10 years ago, I was a tourist guide. And even though I was quite young, I had a lot of old people following me. They were following me for 2 days around the whole country. And of course, it was due to my title, but it was also due to the fact that you are a good leader, right? That they follow, that they can trust you, and that you give them information that they can actually trust. So then we took the flight to some place, and people were in crisis because we couldn't get out of the flight. We were in a small crisis situation. And what I was taught as a tourist guide is that you should always give people information at that exact moment where people are feeling that they are in crisis. Give them as much information as possible so that they have something to lean onto and that have something to take care of or relate to, so they don't feel that there is an empty space that they don't know how to fill out themselves. Because if they are bad at handling their emotions and their mental stability, due to the fact that not a lot of people has actually been mental training, then they need information to hang on to. And that is one of the good things that we have been doing in Denmark so far, that at least a couple of times in the week, the ministers are showing up and giving us information so that people can hold on to those informations and keep the stable situation. Yeah, of course, people need people with good bonding next to them, so that they feel safe. You need to prioritize and delegate as a leader. You cannot handle everything yourself. So in these times, you need to be even better at cognitive distribution. It's a quite fine name, but cognitive distribution means that you need to get rid of everything that you can get rid of in your head, so that you stay clear, almost like a duck. If you see a duck on the water, it looks very silent, but underneath the legs are doing like this. It's very important to keep that silence. So what you are mirroring outside to is silence, and that you are mirroring a silent, how can you say it? That people will mirror your silence, yeah, and not your fear. And you will have to do that cognitive distribution, put out the information to a lot of people to get rid and have an empty space in your head so that you can take decisions when you need to. Because that is basically the only thing we need a leader for. We need a leader to take the final responsibility and to take the final decisions. So the best thing you can do is to clear your head and be ready to take those decisions. And in order to take the right decisions, you need to always have, I've been trained in as a leadership consultant about the structures that they use in the military. And what they do in the military is that they have an ABC plan all the time. They will never be out any plans. So they will be 10 or 12 days ahead of what is going on and put out ABC plans to make sure that they will act instead of reacting. Because the worst decision is taking in fear. So you need to make sure to have this space from taking to have this decision space. I've been doing my master thesis about decision making. You need to make sure that you have this decision span where you don't have to take decisions in no time, but that you have a platform of opportunities to go into. In that way, you will keep your calmness inside, and that is what people can trust right now. So always be proactive and make a risk analysis as often as possible. Get all your people around you to be very much into the numbers and the statistics, so that you can make that risk analysis all the time and take good, thoughtful decisions and not by fear. Yeah, and of course, not to forget, remember to rest. The worst thing you can do right now is to not have your 8 hours of sleep. As a psychologist, we know that even 1 hour less sleep than you normally get will be the same as drinking 1 beer. So if you have only 5 hours of sleep, imagine that you're walking around and not taking good decisions. And it is very important to take that into this consideration, that you need to be that quiet room that can take the right decisions. That is the most important thing that you need to do as a leader right now, to stay in your rest place and to take good decisions.
Oh, I can't have the 3 beers?
Yeah, you could.
Done. Only Klaus Thaler. It is without alcohol in Germany.
Oh my, really?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dieter. Do you have any questions so far to this marvelous lecture that Dieter delivered so far?
Dieter, I think you've done an excellent job. I'd like to add to it the idea of situationality, that an excellently mature individual, as you've said very well, assesses the situation and then discovers or decides upon the appropriate response, but never without an end in mind. So the whole point of all of this is what's the end in mind? What do I want to achieve here? And how do I best go there? And if we think in terms of cognitive or explanatory style and how that relates to how we respond to presenting situations, good and bad, we really are moving into the realm of the distinctions in optimism and pessimism and how they relate to self-esteem and emotional maturity and all that. So it really is quite a wonderful gestalt or a melange of stuff that goes into producing the kind of maturity response that you're discussing. So good on you. Good job. Good job.
Thank you, Don. Any other comments or any questions so far before we move a bit further?
No.
I mean, all participants are very welcomed, of course, to ask questions, to bring statements. Dieter and I, we agreed that this is going to be interactive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, otherwise, thank you, Dieter, so far. We will talk further together. I will just come now, excuse me, to this. Dieter has actually very good shown us the importance of emotional intelligence and bringing data, bringing evidence-based. I have done one comparison of Goleman. As she said, Goleman is actually one of the gurus of emotional intelligence. I've been teaching it in PhD and doctorate programs in medical education for almost 10 years now. And I have done one, those are the competencies of, or the domains of competencies of Goleman. And those are the domains of competencies of our model, as I mentioned before. But just to summarize that, what Dieter says, actually, to strengthen self-awareness, very important thing in those crises as well. Leaders who have let's say, more emphasized, more developed self-awareness, they are likely to make better decisions because, just as Dieter said, they will spread the good feeling and good mood actually among the others. They will not be very nervous, because the situation is scary, of course. And once they have that, so you can see it has one impact in social responsibility. It has one impact in innovation, of course, because the brain now from those leaders, has to be very innovative, and Dieter brought very good, plan A, B, C, and so on. So, and just his orientation, of course. So I'm not going to go through all of those because of the time, but we can share this lecture with everybody because we want really to help people worldwide. And of course, we are here, Dieter, just as you mentioned, with Don and all other colleagues here. We are here to help those leaders in those difficult situations, because indeed, the cognitive capability, it will get shrunk in those scary situations as well. So that's why we need different kind of experts from different kind of fields, of course. Self-regulation, Dieter just mentioned that very important thing. I mean, we have emotions there, but we have to know, she brought it very good, when should we be mad and why, And, self-motivation, while we talk about self-motivation, even in the tough situation, we have to get motivated even when we don't like one skill, let's say, So that differentiates, by the way, outstanding leaders from average leaders. Because just to mention, nobody can become outstanding leader without having emotional intelligence development, really. They have to have very high emotional intelligence to become an outstanding leader. And empathy, right. She mentioned as well, very important thing. Unfortunately, to some of leaders, it's not very developed because we have to go in the shoes of the, other person and to try and understand her or him. And effective relationship, very important too. So as you can see, to summarize, actually all of those emotional intelligence competencies, they align very good, they correlate very good with leadership competencies. So to summarize, you can never become a good leader, outstanding leader, without having one developed emotional intelligence, which can be learned, by the way. That's a good thing. Now I'm going to go a little bit more in, actually a little bit in the brain, in the anatomy, physiology of the brain. I come from the healthcare, as I said, and medical science. And, just to summarize this, so because I'm not going to go in details of the brain, but we can actually divide brain in 3 parts. This is for survival. So you see here the spine, this part here, actually, which it is connected with the spine here, it is in charge for the breathing center, for the blood circulation center, and so on. So if this damaged, actually, so the person cannot survive. But the other thing from here, actually, and the very big part of the brain, it has to do a lot with emotions. And just as Dieter said, we have the emotions here. We cannot ignore them. We cannot just skip them. They are here. And as you can see, every information that it comes, through our sensation, through our body, because everything, it is just as one car, actually. Imagine the body, it is just as one car, actually. So those sensors, they will bring information into the brain, So we got a lot of information. To make it short, about 50 million bits in 200ths of seconds, they come in this part. And where do they come first? Of course, they come in the part of emotional part. And most likely here, if we now, I'm trying to explain it, anatomy and physiology, actually, of the brain and biology. So that means in most of the cases, the decision has been made here before the information goes in the prefrontal cortex, or this part that is in charge for the, that we are reason that, that we will be something, that we will do something in constructive way, or that we do that on, let's say, in purposeful way, and so on. So this is the biology here. Not a lot of information common, not so quick. Compare this 50 with 50 millions, and only 50 till 100 bits. So biologically, to summarize that, it takes very long time until it comes in this part of the executive part of the brain. So this we have to bear in mind as well as a leaders. And of course, we've got this amygdala, which she mentioned very good, Dieter. I'm going here, which always actually brings sensation and impulses that we get scared. And believe me, even those leaders now in those cases, in those crisis, if they didn't have, to do something similar with this before, this will be very much activated. So, and the dangerous would be that this might actually capture the whole brain. So Dieter said very good that our brain actually needs safety, and always search for safety, always search for safety. And if it's not the case, so we call it amygdala hijacking. That means this part of brain here actually, and this has to do with the evolution of the human beings. So we come from this sort of species, as you said, that we survived actually because we are pretty much afraid. In that time, I mean, millions of years before, so we didn't have houses as we have now, and to surround and something like that. So we have actually, even when we were sleeping in the caves, so this has always to be awake and in alert, something like that. So this actually saved us, we can say. It's interesting that during the evolution, this part, it didn't evolve at all, actually. Now we don't have any fear that one hungry tiger will eat us, but we are very much afraid from the next colleague of ours, from neighbor, from the humans, actually. Even though we know now from the neuroscience that we are not actually able to survive till the age of 10 or 12 without a social context, the human beings, we are the biggest enemy and the biggest threat for the others, actually. So this we have to bear in mind. So what means in this stressful situation, and this is very important because we are in the subject how to manage this coronavirus now, it's very important, just as Dieter said, that we remain calm. Because it's interesting, if you see, the outcomes from the neuroscience, when if we go in one new situation or in one new space, in one new medium somehow, this amygdala will actually spread almost 30 times reasons for us to be afraid of that. And only once it will bring one reinforcement, something that we will have something joy. So you can imagine 1 till 30 bad things, let's say, 1 enjoyable thing. So that means instinctively, not in consciousness, our brain, it's actually has a lot of bias, we can say, and it predicts the situation as danger for us. So that's why, to align with Dieter's lecture, it is that we have actually to teach people, to teach the leaders as well, to admit that they are scared. If somebody shouts, for example, always amygdala, it's in the way. And the person, believe me, he or she is afraid always. Normal it's 30 times, as I said, so he will have them, those impulses probably 300, 400 times. All the time, as a parents, as leaders, when we shout, as a teachers, professors, whoever, we are afraid. And now we're going to go a little bit more deep in the physiology here. What is the problem now? If this information go into the right part of the cortex, look at what happened. He or she will be angry, he will have fear, and even it can bring to the depression. And what I dislike in the whole world, unfortunately, that leaders in politics, many times, unfortunately, they do spread fear on purpose. If they do that, they indeed don't like their citizens. Nobody can tell me if they want to make them angry, if they want to make them afraid, if they want to make them depression. I have 2 psychologists here, it's Dieter and Don, and they can correct me, but depression, it is one stage which it's actually not good at all for the human being, So we have to be aware of that. And if we are calm, if we can steer those physiologically now, those impulses on the left side of the prefrontal cortex, so we will strengthen this self-awareness. The person will have better moods. He will be even, the confidence will be higher, of course, and he or she will be in flow. That means he will work for Sokol or for Dieter or for Mark, cannot wait actually to get up and to work for them. But our brain needs recognition and it needs safety. We can make mistakes, but I know my boss, Dieter, will forgive me or she will help me to do the things better. So this is important for us in those crises as well, to bear in mind, to summarize that we gather all specialists and they help us. We cannot now make competitions who is better in this. We need really help. And now just to really to make it figuratively, this, excuse me, sorry, I wanted to go back here. Till now, unfortunately, in any culture, this prefrontal cortex, it was, let's say, overestimated. So we gave too much value to this. And it is, of course, important because it actually makes some, as well, neurotransmitters, which they can control the emotions here as well. But the good thing, it's for us, I mean, what we have to do, we have to change the paradigm. We have very much to focus on emotions because they are there. And there are many of them, as you can see, if you compare this, you know, this prefrontal cortex, which it is for the rationality in charge, it is very small. It is, you know, just as one chair probably, comparing to the Milky Way. And in each school, which I actually went, and kids and everybody, we very much focus on this, learning facts, but nobody talked till lately about emotions. And fortunately, there is a lot of research now, which we can give data. And Yale University, I mean, they have one center of emotional intelligence over there, and they published a lot of good stuff over there. Just to bring two examples, in USA, for example, and in Europe, it's nothing better, actually. It's the same and worldwide. 70% of the employees, they are afraid, you know, to lose the job, or they are not satisfied at work. Imagine that, 70%. So they bring that dissatisfaction home to their wives, to their men, to their kids, and we have one stressful, actually, nation. So it's nothing better in Europe. I would say in Europe, maybe it's even farther, because we are very much deficit-oriented here. I have a good friends from USA, as you can see, and I used to study over there as well. When you do something, they say, wow, Fadil, you did good. In Europe, you know, you do 100 good things. If you do something less good, they will complain and say, hey, Fadil, you made a mistake, you know. So it might be, we have those data from USA, 70% of people are unsatisfied in working place. And this is, as Dieter mentioned, because there is no safety environment there. That is a problem. So we have to change this. And in those crises, probably this even, it's much higher, because everybody of those employees will be afraid now, if I can have a job, if I can feed my family. And I believe that many leaders will listen to us. We will share this because this is the aim to help them. It's very important that they show this empathy, as Dieter says, that they step in the shoes of those employees and see with what of problems those people have to deal. Another thing, because I'm going from the physiology of the body, it is stress. Nowadays, due to this coronavirus, it is a problem that permanent body will produce a lot of hormones of stress, actually. Cortisol, it's, for example, cortisol, it's one stress hormone, but adrenaline, noradrenaline as well. Epinephrine, you call it in American English. It is as well very stressful, of course. And the people will be in this stage, fight or flight, actually. And unfortunately, especially this cortisol, the higher it is in the body, the more will decrease the immune system of the human being. So that means the higher cortisol, the higher likelihood that he or she gets infected, even with this virus. This is important for us as well to mention here. And the same thing with adrenaline, by the way, or epinephrine, because he or she will be always in the alert. And the problem is, in this stage, the colon will not have possibility to work properly, actually. So that means we have to give the body, we have to give possibility, actually, to get involved and to get, as we can see colon here, it should be actually activated, this so-called parasympathicus. I'm not going to go too much in medicine, but you know, this is one nervous system which it works automatically without asking us. And many of our organ system, actually, this system, it helps to work, such as heart beating, for example, or, you know, the colon here. So we have to activate this rest, actually. We call it in English, rest and digest. So that means if the colon, it is, you know, digesting and it rests, not a permanent in stress, this person, columns of this person will work much better. And column, it has a big responsibility actually to protect us from infection. I just wanted to, bring this part of medical part here as well. I don't know if you have any questions so far, or am I talking too quick?
No, you're doing just fine.
Great. So carry on a little bit farther. So
a good background, Fadil, to the underpinnings of the lots of stuff that can affect how a person responds and feels, and even influences their cognitive flexibility and sensitivity. All of this stuff is in one way or another part of the soup that comes out as one degree or another of emotional intelligence. And it's good to understand the background of it. It's not just a cognitive process.
Can I
Thank
ask?
you, Don. That was the aim as well, that we combine with Dita, she wrote her part. And so now I'm going to go to our model of leadership competencies, as I mentioned before. So within those 5 domains, there are 63 competencies that can be learned. And this had been tested and retested. And as a result of this model, we have established this Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland. We are based in Zurich at the World Trade Center, about 5 minutes drive actually from International Airport, Zurich Airport here in Switzerland. And we offer many of courses and postgraduate education, such as Master of Advanced Studies, Master of Sciences, and even PhD and doctorate in collaboration with some universities. And our aim is really to help those leaders with evidence-based, insights, which we collaborate with Don and now with Dita, as you can see as well, and with many other professors worldwide. We have more than 40 professors and faculty worldwide, actually, that we collaborate as a partners. And we try those evidence-based insights actually to make as simple as possible and to teach the leaders worldwide in 5 different kind of domains. First is leadership in business, which it has a lot of specialties, 27 of them, by the way. Then we've got leadership in healthcare. We've got leadership in politics. We've got leadership in higher education, and we've got leadership in law. Because, we have in all of those domains, many people who have key positions in leadership, and unfortunately, they didn't learn a day or an hour how to lead. And this is the question. No matter how good he or she is, without learning anything about that, it's impossible to know actually. And that's why we are here gathering the best brains worldwide, such Don and Dita and all of you here, as I can see now, Mark, and just to name some of Sokol and all of them, and Samir and so on. Really to try and make outstanding leaders, because to mention again, a lot of data we have that we are stressed. Even our students are very much stressed, by the way. We have another study from USA, again from Yale University, which they show 70% of our kids, it's a coincidency, or students are either stressed at school or at university, or they are bored. So we have to try, because now we've got a lot of data about that we have to employ to apply this into the practice. And I put a couple of them, a couple of those competencies, which are actually now currently very important for those leaders, because we promise that we're going to give them something to be more safe and to better actually overcome this situation, the stress. It's important maintaining safety. It is duty of the leaders, by the way. And Dita mentioned that. I did that as well from the physiology. Orienting others in this mess, we need, just as Don and Dita mentioned, we need people who guide us. Actually, leadership is a little bit parenting as well. So we have to trust, building trust, and employees have to trust that he or she is doing the best. And very important thing, I listened to Don's and to Arte, a colleague of us from Las Vegas as well, some very good lectures, by the way, which they produced. And communication, very important thing with employees, with the community, with all stakeholders. Strategic task management, very important in those situations. Of course, eliminating barriers, because some people, it's interesting, they want even a little bit to show, to come a little bit more on TV and so on. So there really it needs, to align those competencies and to see who is doing what. We don't care, we scientists, like us here, Dieter, Don, myself, all of us here, we want actually those leaders to help. So we don't have to go on TV, we will help them with our tools, with the knowledge, evidence-based, and they can go on TV, that's no problem for that. They can go on CNN Live and say, we're going to do that, but we're going to prepare them. This is very important. And unfortunately, when we see many crises, the leaders, they lose because they either don't listen or they don't have a proper people to advise. I always say that when a leader makes a mistakes, unless he's very ignorant and the advisor tells him what to do and he ignores that, doesn't do, always actually the advisors are fault, not the leader himself or herself. So bear in mind that. Providing a good example, he has to be on front, because we pay leaders a lot. We give them a lot of status. Let's say they are on CNN International and TVs all days and admired and so on. They have to deserve that. They have to protect us in those tough situations. That's why we feed them, we give them a lot, so they have them to show who they are. Yeah. That's why providing a good example. Explaining decisions with respect. This is not very easy to say, hey, you have to remain home, actually, to remain safety. We know, as I said, it costs billions of dollars now. And explaining this with respect, I know that some people might be unemployed, but we have, again, to show the empathy, as we mentioned before. And we have to show servant leadership. Unfortunately, we don't see many servant leaders worldwide. So many of them, they want to show, and with respect, there are marvelous ones as well. I don't want to put all of them in one pot. But we wish and we want actually more of those leaders who are there to serve, because that's why we need leaders actually. Leadership, it's not an easy job, and that's why many people fail, by the way, many leaders, because they don't have leadership competencies. Responsibility for the others, very important, of course, because as I said before, so you are in front, we give you everything we have, so please protect us. And very important, honesty and integrity. And there are a lot of surveys and a lot of actually data that the most untrustful people in the world are politicians. And this is really, we need the new generation. We need people like Samira now, I think she's listening, who get prepared after her bachelor. She's doing now, a certificate in leadership. So this is showing actually willingness to learn leadership, because if you don't learn, you cannot become outstanding leader. And by the way, this was on the top of competencies, scoring, I don't know, 4.9 of 5.0. So that means in all of those 6 states which I have investigated, honesty and integrity for the leaders was on the very top. So
Absolutely.
we have to learn to tell the truth, and of course it is painful sometimes, but we have to. On the other side, we need, as we said, to tell people, to try to calm them down, but we have to tell them the truth. Taking initiatives now as well. Dieter just mentioned before, plan A, B, C, many of them, but they have to be persistent despite challenges. A lot of challenges will be now. And for us, it's important to understand the rules of the universe. In this universe, no matter how positive you are, and there are a lot of people who are extremely positive, they bring things, unfortunately, sometimes not very, very evidence-based. It is very good. The positive effect, we know that it's extremely important, due to the mirror neurons, as we said, spreading good feeling, very important. But we have to check the realistic stage as well. And we have to admit that in this universe, just as we are now in this crisis, there are situations which are very much aligned with pain. But we have, to overcome this as well. We cannot just choose, and get the easy things without pain. In this world, there is nothing, just, enjoyment. There is a pain as well. such as illnesses, death of the family members, and so on. And this is very important for the outstanding leader. They can keep calm even in those extremely tough situations. Self-control, we just mentioned before, stress tolerance as well. How can we increase the resiliency, how he or she can be more resilient against the stress, and we can help them as well. Adaptability, in the situation, they've got to get adapted in order, to really be rationally taking the decisions. And of course, with this gut feeling that we say it helps, we have data, by the way, from that as well. But there is not gut feeling, it is actually brain. We've got, those information which are stored in so-called basal ganglia. But of course, in each culture, we call it gut feeling, Bauchgefühl in German. In Balkans culture, there people, they say heart feeling. No matter what, it is actually brain feeling. But it is the one structure which is not connected with prefrontal cortex, and we cannot give one name. But still, it helps. Indeed, we have data with the surgeons, for example, in Australia, and 95% of them, they did a good decision, actually, which they, they were doing an operating theater, doing the operation there, and with time, they didn't exactly know what they're doing, actually. They couldn't tell you what they're doing, but they say, this is now, I'm making this decision now, which science cannot tell me exactly what. So that means actually it's a huge wisdom actually in our brain, but there is no connectivity from this basal ganglia to the prefrontal cortex, and we cannot give a name, but we make a right decision. And Dita, of course, she's a specialist, as she said, in this domain, but I just wanted to bring this from the physiological perspective. Seeking feedback. We know that unfortunately leaders, they, almost never ask for feedback, and they need the must feedback. And it is important as well how we provide feedback, by the way, because we can make a lot of harm. If we don't do that in the proper way, we can scare people additionally. The best thing is when actually the receiver comes and says, hey, Fadil, can you give me feedback? Don, can you give me feedback? And so on. Active listening. This is a very important thing. And unfortunately, many of us, many leaders don't have this ability to listen, just to listen, not saying anything. We have some data in medicine, by the way, medical doctors, how long they wait, until they take the lead and talk further? Only 17 seconds. And that's why when you go as a patient, after you go, from that practice, you say, hey, I wanted to tell him that as well. So that means he's able averagely 17 seconds to listen. And I do teach, professors of medicine as well, and tell them that, and they say, oh yeah, probably. Developing external contacts, very important things, which we are doing. Taking charge, of course, critical thinking, just to name some of them, because I know we have been for a long time here and you are tired. Critical thinking, we've got to go out of the box, actually. And this is a very, very difficult thing, because we need them to change the behavior. And that is, if you compare that, because if you go from the neuroscience, thinking critically and getting out of the box, it is actually getting in one new environment and unsafety. And I always compare that with, there are some very, very good highways, big highways in LA and in Dubai. So you have, on one side, almost 8 highways, tracks, and you have to leave that, And so what it means in the brain, actually, physiology, so that means only one neuron, it has to fire there. So this is, to get out of the box. And unfortunately, we are used to go to that safety highway, because you can drive 101 and go farther. So that you have to leave sometimes, and, to get one very, very tiny path there to change something. And this is difference, from outstanding leaders to the average leader. So taking actually calculated risks, we call that as well. And creative problem solving. Unfortunately, we know that many of leaders, make additional problems to the people, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, due to the non-competencies that they have. But leaders are there actually to solve our problems and not to make the problems. Because I have to make one quote here. Sometimes they say leaders or teachers are there to solve the problems which we wouldn't have without them. Also leaders or teachers are there to solve the problems which without them we wouldn't have. I mean, we are talking about non-competent leaders. And seeking, of course, improvement, open door policy, very important thing, absolutely openness to ideas. You come there and he embraces those ideas and not to kill. I'm talking against, self-critics here in Europe. You bring one idea and they just want to kill it before. No, it doesn't go because of the jealousy, because of, oh, why didn't I think like that? And that's why, to be honest, not that I have here on board my USA colleagues, but it is another approach. And when people ask me sometimes why USA it is so developed, because they take a little bit more calculated risks, more than us in Europe. They solved many problems in Europe during the Second World War, during the Kosovo and ex-Yugoslavia war. They were USA who solved us problems because the Europe totally failed, absolutely failed. Milosevic was making genocides in Bosnia and in Kosovo and so on, and Europeans, they were watching. So those are those calculated actually risk, as we say, and being open to that and not to kill the ideas. That's why USA gathers the best brains worldwide to do research. And if you do research, you can go ahead. And if you don't kill ideas, if you give me one idea and I say, oh, it is dangerous, kill it, what I will do I will demotivate you. And in those crises as well, it's very important for the leaders to listen to the new and innovative ideas, to solve those crises. Because it's going to be a lot of mess. We hope that we survive. Many of us survive. That's a very important thing. And the second thing is, how can we manage then those economical crises which they are? And I want to take in here actually opportunity to invite the whole world indeed to follow those instructions from the professionals. Stay home and you can save lives, yours and the others, absolutely. And we need, again, I say, and I actually ask for all of those leaders that they gather the best experts that they have worldwide, professionals that they consult, and the professionals make decision even for the political leaders, because they, with the whole respect for them, they are not specialized in the virusology or whatever, so you need those experts. And collaborating, very important thing. We know in many countries it's a lot of mess, despite of those crises in viruses, which they go and say, I want to become the first, I want to take those measures, and then they, stress the population even more. Unfortunately, in the country where I was born, it's happening now. Even though those armed people, they have to fight against that virus, the non-competent leaders, they are stressing them additionally. And that's why I'm very glad that people like Samira, who originally comes from there, will make another approach in the near future. Sensibility to the situation, it needs that. It needs intelligence. It needs cognitive and emotional intelligence. And just as I mentioned, intelligent risk-taking. So this was it to this part of mine. Now we are very much open to the questions, to the critics, of course, Dieter and I. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. What we need, we have on board many other experts here, such Don, Mark, Sokol, Samira. All of us are here, very good in our domains. So please go ahead. And I can see Vicky there. Vicky, hi, welcome. Just join us. You can sit near Don if you wish. I know it took a bit longer than as we declared. So any questions, any comments so far?
I think I have something to add, Fadil.
Please, Dieter.
I fell out at the exact moment that you said something about Europe, so I didn't get that point. But
Can I repeat that, just that you get it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Because it's important. What I meant, Dieter, and this is my experience. I did study in USA and in Canada as well, and in Europe very much as well, and was born here. Especially in USA, they have this approach that they encourage you. When I do something, they say, wow, Fadil, great. And I made the experience in just comparing. This is I didn't make any data, but it is my impression. When you do something and bring one new idea in Europe, it is this jealousy overestimated, actually, which they say, oh, no, Fadil, it will not go. Or Dieter, you bring one marvelous idea. I say, no, it will not go. It's expensive. That means kill it. That's what I was saying. It is my impression. I didn't do any data to evaluate that.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So that is actually a very great link to the thing I wanted to add, is that in order to understand leadership, we need to understand that there are human leadership and then there are system leadership. Yeah. So just to add something to you, it might be to you, Samira, who's looking into political systems. What we need to understand is that we need to differentiate between the people and how they encourage each other, and then the platform. If we see a country as a platform, we need to understand that sometimes the platform is either keeping people safe. In the Danish model, we are keeping people safe by the fact that they are assured that they will have money to survive. That is a way of taking people's fear away.
Very good.
So that is another way of empowering people. So we empower people by the platform, by the system leadership. So we put a lot of effort into building the right system for people to feel safe.
You bring them, actually, I'm just going to that, just go ahead, Dieter.
What
the audience here, what you are doing, marvelous thing. So you still actually physiologically, those neurotransmitters to go on this way, and information, yeah.
So very seldom people are actually going into fight or flight mode. But since we started to, and it's a great discussion. I think we can discuss this for 10 years actually.
Yeah.
But what we have been trying to do is to make a secure platform for everyone to make sure that they can survive. And in that way, we have high educated people. We have a lot of creative people. We are living out of our knowledge because people are not in the fear brain. They are actually in the creative brain. So we can create a lot of good theories from that. But what would happen is that 10 years ago, we started to copy the other world. We started to copy other worlds, and we started to copy the opportunity to be more free. And that is actually quite good. The problem is when we start to copy countries which are empowering people, just like the United States, we are starting to take away the ground-breaking, the secure platform, because we cannot both put money into the secure platform and also liberate and empower people like they do in the United States. So things have changed, and because things have changed, the businesses have also changed. So what I've been in the United States as well at a high school for 2 weeks to experience the United States. So I do understand what you relate to. So I think hopefully there will be a big debate about these situations in the future, because I have been teaching in appreciative inquiry today, actually this morning, and what we want to focus on there is to build visions where we look at the frustrated dream. What is it that we are as a world are actually trying to create? What is the biggest dream? What is the perfect world? And in order to gather experts talking together about how can we create the perfect world? How can we create a perfect world where people are surviving, thriving, feeling empowered, and still maintaining the efficiency so that everyone can count on the fact that everyone is going to survive. That is actually what every country is dreaming of, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that different countries have different solutions into those dreams and frustrated dreams. And those are the things that we need to discuss. So the business, in the business world, I don't believe in putting things into boxes, but if we need to put things into boxes just for a short while, the business strategies are to hold people into fear so that you will keep up the efficiency. So you will motivate people by fear. And in the government perspective, or in the real life, you are motivated to be together with people from the motivation of meaningfulness and love, and to get the inner feeling of being happy. Those are two different ways of motivating people. Either you're motivating them by the things that they don't have but that they need, or you are giving them the basic needs, and then they are motivated by higher purposes. So I think those two perspectives are quite interesting.
Absolutely, Dita, very good you brought that, but it needs absolutely one paradigm change here, especially in business. You mentioned perfectly well, and it goes worldwide, unfortunately, because you can never become creative if you are in fear. You cannot go and bring, one gun to somebody. I know I'm exaggerating now, and say, become creative now, If he's in fear, you know what happened? Just as that study of Yale showed, they will just be actually engaged how to survive the day, you see?
Yeah.
There is no creativity over there, absolutely.
No.
And some people, sometimes they rather go to die than go to work. That's why we have data as well in the morning, Monday morning, a lot of heart attacks occur actually that kills people. We have a lot of data to that as well. So this approach, and good thing is, Dita, that now we have data from neuroscience. We can scan now the brain pretty good and show in such a situation, look what happened with brain, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the social pain as well. If you shout at somebody, if God knows he doesn't know to do that or that. So it is just as you hurt him with a knife, by the way. So these insights, not just only me says, but I mean, a lot of people from neuroscience bring you those actually data that if we can apply this into the business, that business will grow much better, creativity will grow. Look at what happened with Apple and whatever, those companies. I don't want to make advertisement now. They try, to work with the physiology of the brain. If you don't work with the physiology of the brain, we will always lose. By the way, always when we work, again, the nature and the physiology.
Yeah. Exactly.
So thank you very much, Dita. Don, anything to add, or other colleagues?
No, I thought this was an excellent conversation. We might try this again and maybe bridge through a broader picture to put some greater stamp on your medical models, Fadil, and Dita, to sort of expand. I think you've tapped into something very important. I'd like to see you expand upon it a bit more. Open it up, and let's have another discussion. I think this would be excellent. I thought it was lovely.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, all of you. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments before we end? Because we have been for a long time here discussing. Samira, do you have any questions? Any comments?
No, I loved listening to the information, a lot of new information. I think I'm going to think about that and to realize what I learned today. I was only wondering, we were talking about the competencies, and we said that the problem is that politicians and businessmen do not really learn them before being politicians or businessmen. But I was wondering if it is maybe also, especially critical thinking, for example, a lack of education, because there was also this international test on schools in every state, and they were also doing research on how children are doing concerning critical thinking, for example. And I was only wondering if it starts when we are children, that we have this lack of competencies for leadership.
Dieter, would you like, or Don? And then I will go at the end with, yeah. Thank you, very important question. Thank you, Samira.
Yeah. I think that is something that we are very focused on in Denmark, to build up the self-esteem and to build up the critical thinking already from the beginning of the childhood. Already in the kindergartens, we are asking to get the kids to get into critical thinking and ask questions. Do we need to believe this theory, or could there be other perspectives on it? And in that way, we are quite good. I would say that we are quite good at analyzing stuff and do the ABC plan. We do that with a lot of stuff. We are just not following people. We are stopping up and saying, can I really trust this theory? Can I believe it? Is it the right research that I'm putting into it? And can I trust my guts and my emotions by that perspective? So we are encouraging children to be very creative and do artworks, and we are measuring them on whether they are also good people. Actually, we have this. If you build up a good organization, you will always measure people on both the economic part, the social part, and the content. Do we have the right content within the organization? Do we have the right theories? Do we have the right knowledge? Which is three parts on how to measure whether an organization is successful or not. Because we are living out of our creativity. We are living out of the products that we develop in our countries, based on the creativity. And because we have a good foundation all in all in the beginning, we are allowed to do that and do such things. And that is what I see I tend to want to stay out of the right or wrong mind or right or wrong things to do, because I think it's a very, very important discussion these days on how to build the perfect country and the perfect organizations where you can include the whole human being. But of course, if you're not building organization where you can include the whole empowered being, it is hard for me to see that you can be efficient and effectful and change the world. So we need to talk about how we can create whole organizations for the whole being. Other stuff will be stupid. It would be stupid to leave out those knowledges that we have today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question starting at children. The research that we did, the years of research that we did that produced our management and leadership effectiveness models, the very strong correlation to the quality of early education and the continuity of that throughout the person's life, and that effectiveness, and part of what we're talking about in leadership is effectiveness, that effectiveness is increased by the quality of education and intelligence. I mean, there's a sort of there that unfortunately some people are more gifted than others, and that has to be guided and recognized, not socially stigmatized, but recognize that we change the world and companies within it and families within it one person at a time. You know, go out to the top and start screaming at the top of our lungs, all we're going to do is get thrown in jail somewhere. You know, and so that early education, the social awareness of parenting and of the nature of the creativity-centered, curiosity-centered education is critical. And too much education in the world takes an incredibly curious and open and intelligent child and turns them into a dullard by the time they get out of high school.
Yeah.
Forget that. They don't ask questions anymore. Yeah. One of my partners, all my partners and I, and Artie, Nathan particularly, we work very, very hard when we get into large organizations and just stumble over the lack of not of creativity, but of curiosity on the part of people, right? And that's another part of emotional intelligence and effectiveness and all this other stuff is we've got to sustain curiosity in our children, in our adolescents, and lionize it, reward it in adulthood. Otherwise we end up with the problems that we see, and folks without curiosity will put leaders without curiosity in place. Leaders without empathy in place.
Absolutely.
So, you know, one person at a time, using all this stuff that we know. You know, one of my partners, two of my partners are on this call. Both of them probably fell asleep because we're talking about stuff that is on one end of the continuum. You know, that on the other end is how do you make it practical? How do we actually practicalize this stuff? You know, so that regular human beings can make use of it. So a riff on my part, but I agree with everything you're saying. And
would it be a good thing if I come with 3 practical things that you can do to cultivate the emotions?
Well, we've only got time for 2.
Okay, 2. Good.
Yeah, so going to be till midnight.
I think that
3, yeah.
I'm only allowed to give two
No,
things.
no, 3's okay.
2 things.
You know, Don has some good humor. Go ahead.
I think that if you stayed out of the religious part of meditation, and we have been doing some research in the universities of Denmark while I was at the university, we did some brain measures. We put on these dots to measure people's brain waves. And what we know is that meditation can regulate people's brain waves. It can regulate people from being in the high beta state where they have a lot of thoughts going on and they cannot really take decision, into the theta state where they are relaxed and are focused about taking decisions. That are the one thing. Go to meditation, listen to meditation, or do your meditation practice at least one or twice a day. That is such a good thing as a leader. And then if you are going into an anxiety attack, and all people will do that at some point in this whole crisis period, you will have anxiety attacks. And the anxiety attacks are known by the fact that you will be so much into your head that you feel that you're losing your ground, that you cannot get a grasp or a hold in the reality. And the best way to, and please correct me, Don, if it's not true, but the best way to, I have been taught that the best way to get rid of those anxiety attacks is actually to stay in the emotions and be there for 15 minutes. Look at the emotions, have the courage to stay there and find out, why am I fearful right now? What am I afraid of? What are the solutions in all this? Can I get some solution out of the fact that right now I'm feeling unsafe myself? So if I'm feeling unsafe myself, could it be that my employees are feeling unsafe as well? So staying though in those emotions and stay there until the emotion has arisen and you have found your ground on the feet on the ground again.
I think that's excellent. I'll give you a little trick. When treating clinical patients and they have a strong set of emotions of fear or of anxiety, I'll sometimes look at them and say, all right, I tell you what, I'll give you 5 minutes starting right now to be as anxious and afraid as you can possibly be.
Exactly.
And they universally look at you and laugh, because if you ask them to be that way, they realize that it's impossible, right? So that's a way to begin to chip away or stick a needle into and suck the stuff out of that, because something like that tells them immediately that being irrational is irrational in a sense, right? And that helps to trick them out of it, if you will. And then they've got to examine, to do exactly what you just said, is then examine what's going on here. And what are they telling themselves that is irrational that's causing that response? But you can crack it by asking them this ironic question, you know, or asking them to do something so ironic. It cracks them out of it. It's a lot of fun. But it's okay. In our trade, it's okay to be tricky.
Thank you, both of you. I think Samira, both of colleagues of mine, they answered the question. I'm just going to add physiological part of that as well. So it needs as early as possible to start to learn emotional intelligence, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that physiologically, this prefrontal cortex, it will not get matured till about 20 till 25 years old. So that means there is, you have to be patient, but work on it. And fortunately now, especially, I don't want to exaggerate now, Yale University, but they brought some very good insights that really we can practice that with kindergarten kids or even before. And it brings a lot of impact, just as Dieter and Don mentioned, first of all, to recognize the emotions, then labeling them, because we have to differentiate, for example, different kind of emotions. The more we know, the better. We have to know what kind of symptoms, occur when they come, for example, and then how kind of measures to have, to control them. But yes, so it is learnable. We can start as early as possible. And just as both of colleagues of mine mentioned, some of people, they come to this world with a little bit bigger, we can say, this kind of prefrontal cortex that it inhibits them, those bad emotions, let's say. And we have this, marshmallow in Stanford. It was for many years, like in the 30 years experiment, which those kids which didn't have enough patience, to wait to get 2 marshmallows after 15 minutes, they were actually 30 years later, about 30 years later, they were, asking them again and checking what they were doing. So they didn't actually achieve in life as better as those who were able to wait to have, the reward after 15 minutes. So this tells you actually that there is a biological component here, because those kids, they were, I think, pre-kindergarten kids,
Yeah.
In the new study, it's interesting as well how influential it's the group. We have now, I think 2017 was one study, the influence of the group. They were asking, for example, 4 or 5 of us, they would say, yeah, Fadil, actually, would you like 1 hour, 15 minutes later? But they will tell me your group, Don, Samira, and Dieter, they wanted actually to wait. So I was then influenced to wait. So it tells us actually with whom you are associated, that it will impact your a little bit or much more probably the future as well. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So Dieter, your points were very, very well taken.
Thank you. Any other question or statements? Because I know, so with psychologists here to discuss, we're going to be till the middle of the night, but great people, great minds.
That's right.
That was compliment, by the way, to both of you, Dieter and Dan.
Thank you.
I meant a positive thing, and I'm great.
Fortunately, it's probably true.
Absolutely. I don't say anything else except truth, as I said. Yeah.
I'm good.
Great. Anybody else? Any questions? Well, thank you very much, then, Dieter. Thank you very much, Don. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Samira. Thank you, all of you, Sokol and the rest, for joining us. It was a great discussion. I'm going to try to spread this. I hope that it will go, because we are more than 1 hour. I hope that YouTube will follow it, but try to do the best. And I wish you, your families, and every human being all over the world to overcome those crises as better as possible. And I emphasize again, we are here to help you wherever you are, with whatever we know. And I believe there are a lot of resources, as you can see, so don't hesitate to contact us.
Yes, health and safety.
You have the last word, ladies.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Dieter and Fadil, I'd like to schedule another call with the 2 of you, maybe tomorrow sometime, if that's possible, and chat a bit.
Absolutely, Don. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Everybody.
Take care out there.
thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you very much for participating, all of you.
Bye.
Bye, Mark. Bye. Arte, all the best. Arte, all the best.